Good afternoon, almost. Hello, everyone. I hope my voice will last for the next hour, so if it goes up and down, it's you'll get it. Tough night yesterday. Creative teams of all sizes should have access to a powerful pipeline. It's the purpose why we're doing everything that we are doing, and we're going to have a look at how we're doing that. So there's a few common problems. By the way, if you can't see stuff through me, then do this, and I will figure it out, and I'll move somewhere to the side. So there's situations that we can keep hearing again and again. We had an over-engineered pipeline that has died recently. It's an email we received about 2 years ago. We don't have large engineering department to build our tools from scratch. We had a great pipeline, but it is getting old, and our developer has left the company. Now, hands up, who has been in those situations? Anywhere? That's depressingly many hands. But there is more. Then there are companies that have pipeline, and they're telling us, our tools are getting really slow, but they're hard to change in the flow of production. Or we're growing really fast, but our pipeline feels like a prison and doesn't scale. We have to pivot to a different type of project, but the wiring of our tools is a little bit too rigid, and there is nothing that we can do about it. So the truth is, creating a pipeline from scratch sucks. Like, it sucks big time. Let's face it, it's never just a question of a few scripts that you put together. That they individually do their job well, but sooner or later, this turns into a major software engineering project. And really, creative studios, there's not a whole lot of them that have the capabilities and facilities and the requirement kind of know how to do that. So that's essentially why we set up Ynput, why we created the company. About 5 years ago, first as an internal dev department of Kredenc studio in Prague, eventually separating out into an independent company that we are today, when we realized that the tech we put together had a substantially more value than the studio itself. Sometimes life throws you a curveball. So 4 years later, and now essentially this year just to get you an idea of why maybe to listen to me, why you should even sit here and maybe consider what I'm going to tell you. 4 years later, the team is over 20 members, I think 23 of us right now, full-time on this massive open source project that we have put together. We have helped over 50 studios, a little bit more than that over the past 5 years in various capacities to deploy it or to work with their pipeline and to consult through support contracts or long-term agreements. So in Ynput, and by the way, yes, it's just weirdly spelled Ynput. It's not Yput and blah, blah, blah. It's Ynput. Make it simple. So we're on a mission to simplify the process of building pipelines and automating workflows for creative studios. To do that, we've gone through a few iterations over the years. Started with what we called Pipe 1, very original. That was a culmination of other tech that was out there. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel. No one likes that. We like it the least. So it was Publish, pipeline from Colorblade Studio, Avalon, and lots of other open source tech that you will find that we put together into what we considered a reasonable package. 5 years later, it was less reasonable than one would expect, but that's a good thing. And this is the feeling that you get from the old work. Then it's essentially, you're doing well, you're improving. So a little bit later, we renamed it to Pipe 2 when we realized everything that we've done was kind of good, but not really. So Pipe 2 was already a production viable solution that we deployed to a bunch of studios around the world. A couple of years later, you can see how those development processes are extending 1 year, 2 years, when we realize that we know that we don't know, and then you have to rebuild again and again. So we renamed to OpenPype 3. We added open to it just to enforce that this was always supposed to be a big open system. And this is still in production now by, I'm hoping, less and less studios as we're transitioning into the new phase of the project. But still, many of our clients are actually running large productions on OpenPype 3, slowly migrating out. Now, last year, we have announced what was originally supposed to be OpenPype 4. But then we realized we have rewritten everything that we could have rewritten about the product with the knowledge that we gained over the past years. So we gave it a fresh new start, called it AYON. Exactly a year ago, we released a pre-release alpha. And for the past years, we've worked with quite a few studios on getting it to the level that we can be 100% confident that the underlying core of it is going to be useful for any scale of studios. So in January, we finally released AYON 1.0, and that's what we're going to be talking about. I'll try to give you as much of an overview of what it does and what it can be useful for. We won't go into nitty-gritty details. We are here for the full week. Please grab us somewhere. These T-shirts, you'll find them in multiple places around the event. There's like 8 of us around here. So please grab us and ask questions, any technicalities that you want to talk about. We'll be happy to do it. So, what is it? A powerful open source modular pipeline and project management platform for creative studios of all sizes. Whew. So that doesn't really roll off the tongue. It's a terrible in the logo. Our designers was like, no, this is not happening. So instead of saying this, which is kind of the truth of it, we simplified the whole thing. And as of now, we're referring to AYON as Open Studio Platform. You'll see pipeline is extremely important part of it, but that's not what AYON is only about. So let's have a look what's in there. So what does it actually do? It manages all the data for the entire production process. That's from ingest to delivery. We're not arrogant enough to say that it is the only way to do stuff, but it is a distillation of many opinions of many studios that we iterate with every new studio that we work with. We put a little bit more opinion, and hopefully we get to something that's a reasonable default for most. It gives you out-of-the-box pipeline setups for most studios. Once again, there will be studios that will need to tweak a lot. That's just the nature of the pipeline after all. It's a platform for building your own studio workflows on top of. A service framework with a unified event stream that you can utilize, pull events from other systems and work on top of that one event stream to automate other. It gives you a centralized and massively extendable studio API. Yes, please. Well, hello. Yeah, there you go. So massively extendable studio API, and I will show you a little bit more about it later. It is the central source of truth for all production metadata. That is where we're going with this. You might use many other systems around it, that's the whole point. But we're hoping that AYON will prove itself valuable really to be the place to go for all of this being aggregated to the one reasonable place. Web and desktop UIs for artists, TDs, soups, as we go along, producers, and any other part of your production process. And really anything that you want, provided you can code in Python, because the custom add-ons that you can put on top of AYON allow you to do more than would be reasonable, probably. It's, you can touch any part of the system with it. So, but what is it actually made of? Well, that was lovely what it can give you, but what is it made of? Well, a lot of Python code, like a lot of it. But ultimately, the product is stacked with multiple layers, as we're calling them. We're calling them layers because each of them are useful independently. Some can be replaced, some can be augmented with other tooling, internal tooling, or completely third-party tooling on top of it. The idea is that server is at the core of it. It's very hard to go without it, but it doesn't mean that you have to use the server and everything with it. So the 3 main layers that we have right now is the server, pipeline, and production. Production was recently announced a month ago on our community summit in Prague, that we think it's about the time that we start helping studios get their data all into one package, so they can do that if they want to. We'll talk about all of them to some degree today, but what's important to keep in mind is that it's just completely possible to pick and choose from these. And you can use them independently, be it as a product, but also keep in mind this is all open source, so you can use them as inspiration for your code. You can pull the server and build your pipeline on top of it. You can take the pipeline, take concepts from it, certain tooling, and plug it into your pipeline. We're absolutely fine. All the licensing is Apache 2, some of it is MIT, so it's about as open as we could possibly make it. Right. And importantly, you get an ecosystem of tools, studios, and community. Currently, around 1,500, 1,600 people on our community forum and Discord. It's an extremely active community. To give you an idea, last year, at any point in the repository, there was roughly 100 pull requests opened in the main repository, out of which roughly 20%, 25% were from community. Now, those take a while to merge because we need to make sure they actually are up to scratch, but there is a very active community of people that might often be more helpful than we are ourselves when we are busy with clients. So you get that. And the studios, we're doing our best as we work with studios to connect them together. So if a studio comes with an opinion, and another studio comes with another opinion, we're taking it as our job to try to sit them around the table and maybe find things that we can cover both of those use cases, so we don't have to burn resources and build A here and B here, but really A, B would cost 1.5 times of A rather than double development. So we're trying our best to do this, to govern the project around these ideas. So what does AYON server give you? We'll actually have a look at the product in places. So it is built with Python 3. There is not a single line of Python 2 only code in there. We have ditched that in the history. We've made it for this century and hopefully for next century. It is built on very well-tested stack. Postgres, Redis, Fast API, React for all the front ends. This is all tech stack, which handles a lot more data than we need to handle in VFX in other applications and other industries. Again, we didn't reinvent the wheel. We built it on something that is well known to scale. You can deploy it in 2 ways. Fully possible to self-deploy on-prem, behind any firewalls. You can go completely dark, never tell us about yourselves. That is fully possible. An identical product is also hosted on Ynput Cloud, which is our cloud platform where studios that don't want to host themselves, they can go and get it as a SaaS. You're up and running in a couple of minutes. So both are 100% possible. We do provide a full Docker stack for you and a Docker image, so you can get up and running on-prem if you know Docker really within minutes. And that is released with every new version of AYON. We make sure that it's up there. So what's inside of it? So considering we're trying to put ourselves in the middle of all production tracking systems, it's a bit of an exercise in flexibility because we need to be sure that whatever you choose to work around AYON, that you will be able to sync your data. Ergo, the system allows you to really build it in any way that you want. We have folders, which are your shots, assets, episodes, books, chapters, whatever you want to call it, levels. It's totally up to you what kind of types you give to these top-level folders. These can be hierarchically organized in any way that you want. Those can have any amount of products. That is your compositing render, your broken model, or anything like that. It's a type of data and it's variant. Those can have any amount of versions, including locked hero versions and latest and kind of slightly abstract concepts of versions on top of it. And each version has any set of representations. So you have a render, you can absolutely publish an EXR representation, a ProRes with burned-in LUT, and a ProRes which is in its raw state. All of that kind of contained within the same data model. Of course, we have tasks. It's kind of hard to do work without those. And those produce work files, which are slightly less managed and a less free-for-all, you can make a mess in here type of data for artists. So the workflow is you have your work file and you publish data out of it into versions that are then immutable and locked in the system. But that's just the very base of it. There is a whole lot more of concepts that we support. Hopefully, everything that you should want from a centralized thing that you might want to sync to ShotGrid and to Flow, and to FTrag and to Kitsu. We do support all of the data types that they have because we kind of have to be flexible enough. If some out of these concepts, if it's named in a way that you're thinking, what is that? It probably means it's a concept that we have and we haven't found in the other systems. We did our best to name stuff without coming up with new names, stuff that you can hopefully understand very easily. But if there is something that you're like, oh, what is a bundle? That means others don't have bundles, and I'll explain what they're supposed to be. So we'll start with users and security. So users, so the security of AYON is absolutely paramount for us from the beginning. And we opted for a few levels how you can organize your users. Essentially, you have top-level access. That is a service, anything for your API keys, things that can be used programmatically, that it's a users that cannot log in themselves. It can impersonate other users if need be. Admins, they can do anything that they want. Managers is a top-level user that can do almost anything within a system that's not related to tech backend. So they cannot change versions of add-ons that go into productions. They cannot do some really, really core techie bits, but they can create new projects. They can see all of the projects. They can see all of the users. It's a quite high-level role without the ability to really screw up the technical part of it. Then we have users. Vast majority of your people, hopefully, will be users. And those how you control those, I apologize, as you can see, I have a little bit of a sniffles today. So how you organize your users is with access group. Now we opted for zero trust policy on all the users. This gives you a little bit extra admin sometimes when you're creating new people, but we would much rather if a mistake while creating a lot of artists at the same time, because you can do everything in bulk. We'd much rather if that mistake means that 50 artists do not see projects rather than 50 artists accidentally see all of the projects and everything that they shouldn't see. So it is flipped the opposite way. Essentially, and I'll show you on the next slide how that actually works. So the access groups, you can create any arbitrary ones that you want, and each access group can have any granular permission. So I can say this can create and read and update folders and publish versions. I actually forgot to do it on the video, but if I opened up those sections over there, you will actually see that you can say that this particular access group is restricted to publishing only to things where they are assigned to, or only to particular subset of a hierarchy of a project. So you can be extremely granular if you want to, you don't have to. And then on top of that, those are the defaults, but per project, you can inject an opinion on top of the access group that lets you not rework the whole system, that works for a system for the full studio, but I have a project which is a bit more secure and I need to take away certain permission from a bunch of artists just for that project. You can do that without rebuilding everything. It's a hierarchical system that you can apply. Then, when you actually go to the user page, everything is multi-select. So I can select a lot of users, select a project, and as soon as I give them access group to that project, they can see it under those particular permissions. So until an artist has some kind of access group assigned to a project, they will not see it. As I said, this is a zero trust model. However, you can set system to tell, hey, new users will have these access groups by default, so you can flip it around kind of a little bit, and you can say, hey, everyone will see everything. Or you can select all the projects and all the 500 users at the same time and tell them, hey, all of you, you will be artists on all of these projects. It is absolutely possible. Everything that we do, we make sure you don't have to keep clicking one by one. You can always do everything in bulk. There is also a concept of teams in the system, but those are for production tracking. That says that on this project, there is a compositing team and they have compositing lead. That doesn't change the permissions, that just gives an information to everyone else in the studio how your production is structured. You can use SSO. There is a set of add-ons that we have built that you can get from us. They're currently in beta testing with clients, so just let us know if you want to try it. It is totally possible. There are built-in providers via OAuth 2. Google and Discord are the first example ones that we've made, but it's possible to really connect almost any arbitrary system. As you can hear, we have login with Ynput community, which is a discourse forum, completely arbitrary. There's nothing standardized about that particular thing, so it is possible. And we also have a Keycloak add-on. So if you know Keycloak, it's a fairly large open source identity management solution. It has a very robust setup for LDAP, AD, any crazy big systems that you want. We don't like reinventing the wheel, as I said before, so we would much rather help you deploy Keycloak. You can work with it and then can sync your users and access groups and all of that between the systems. So other people have done that well, so we are utilizing those solutions. Events, as I was mentioning. So we have a robust event system. Everything that happens inside of AYON is logged as an event. These are really detailed. So every event that happens, you can see who did it, when it happened, what was the entity. But you can see the previous state and the new state. So for example, if someone changes settings of a pipeline really crazily and they just store a big new chunk of settings, you will be able to find it in events and you will be able to see when exactly what settings change, and we can revert them based on that. You can tap into this. It has a full API access. So you can store events from other system, from Deadline or anything else into it. And then we have a service framework, which are essentially, for us, mostly Python files, but it can be anything that can be Dockerized. And you can run these little Docker services inside of AYON that can operate on top of these events and do processing. And you can manage them, stop them, turn them off, restart them from AYON directly. You can even have them parallelized and run on multiple machines if you write the service in the correct way. So that's the backbone of a lot of stuff that's happening inside of AYON. Now, robust setting system, this is the pride and joy and the bane of our existence in some cases. So we do our best that everything that can be configurable can be done in the UI. That doesn't mean you can't go into code. You can go into code at any point, but for things like turning off particular type of publish in a production, probably you shouldn't need to go in the code. So the setting system we have, you can see that every add-on has its independent settings. Those can be set on a studio level, which is denoted by a green color when you change the settings. You know that the opinion has been set on a studio level and is not default ION anymore. But you can do it on a project level on all of these. So you can go to a project, do extra opinion on top of that. That color is orange. So if something goes wrong, and it will, sooner or later, by the way, you will screw up settings somewhere. So when something goes wrong, you can very easily find, okay, so I have changed this. This is orange. I know that's a project opinion. Let's try to remove it. Let's see what the studio default opinion does. You can work with that in a very robust way. Of course, as you're changing those, you can do a lot of changes, and then they show up here. Once you commit, they go into the system, and they propagate to all the machines at the same time. Staging environments. Now, settings are nice, but I mean, no one really has the balls to do settings in mid-production things that can affect everything. So we have multiple ways of handling this. Essentially, we have a concept that we call bundles, production bundles, that says, for this pipeline setup, this set of add-ons in this particular versions is a reasonable set. That might be put in production, but it can be put in staging. Now, when it's put in staging, that means that I can do any changes to the settings. They don't affect the production that's live running, and I can choose a subset of artists in the studio or TDs or leads and ask them, hey, can you please run ION on your machine in staging mode, so they can test out all of these settings, all of these kind of complex things that you can do before you roll it into the full production. So that's kind of an in-between step that we recommend to do essentially every time that you would update an add-on to a new version, or you would change the settings, to do it in staging and then push it into production. You can 100% run a completely separate ION server for dev purposes, of course. But then that doesn't have the same database as the main one, so we all know that situation, hey, it runs on my machine, on my test project, but then it explodes in artist hands. So this is kind of, there are steps that you can take to eliminate this problem to some degree, hopefully. One more thing. The bundles, they also define what launcher is used on the artist machine, so the desktop application that comes with ION. So if I want to update it, if I want to push a new version of launcher to all the artists, all I need to do is I make new bundle. I change the launcher version to the new one that I have deployed to my server, and as soon as I make it production, all the machines of all the artists will be requesting to self-update. So even if they're sitting at home, outside the studio environment, we will push that launcher to their machine. It kind of, for them, it looks like when you have Slack or Zoom or any of these that just kind of self-update, but it's not happening from our servers, it's happening from your server that can be behind the firewall. So it's a fully island-made system. Market and community. So if you are online, if you're running on our cloud, or if you just have studio that doesn't have 3 TPNs stacked on top of each other, you can use the marketplace. Currently, there are add-ons which are published by us, so all the official add-ons, all the individual integrations are part of the marketplace. We are working hard on opening it up for other people to put whatever they want in there, so studios can share workflows. Some first options are already popping up and soon will be there. It will tell you if you need to update. You can pull those individually. But importantly, it also helps you bootstrap the whole server. So you deploy ION. There's not a whole lot there at the beginning, obviously. So if you are connected to the market, which happens through going to, it's in the corner, you can say connect to Ynput Cloud. Cloud is the platform that essentially provides all of this API for updates. It will allow you to, with a single button, say, I want to choose ION standalone or ION with a particular production tracker, and it will bootstrap all of this to the latest production bundle that we have tested and that we consider safe. Because obviously, you have 30 add-ons, there are good chances until some point that if you keep updating just one add-on, at some point incompatibilities might happen. We are finalizing system that would prevent it, that would tell you if you update one add-on and that has dependency on a different version of another add-on, this will be, the system will let you know before you deploy it into production. It will not allow you to create it. But right now, you have to be a little bit careful. So you can jump by bundles that we release, that we say, hey, this works together, this is reasonable, and then be a little bit careful about around that. Last but not least, on the server side, APIs. So the core is the REST API that you can do pretty much everything with the system. Is a REST API we build on top of Fast API platform. It's all automatically documented, and documentation is directly in your product as a web page inside of ION, which relates to your exact deployed version. So you can go to our website and see the API documentation, but you might have a different version of the server installed, so careful about that. Look at the documentation inside of your deployed ION if you have it. For certain things, like deep nested, that's a terrible resolution. Oh. For deep nested links between assets, so if I want to see, give me all the shots that are affected by this particular rig, and that's going to jump through many loops of linkages. GraphQL is a much more modern and much more robust solution to resolve these resolutions and these deep nested relationships. So there is a full GraphQL support as well. It's read-only. Anything right, you have to go through REST. Of course, we have a Python client, a wrapper around the REST API that is available on pip. And we actually do have C++ API in progress. Now, this is not to be an officially running, fully compatible API. We have to make it for our own internal purposes because we have just finished the first version of the native USD resolver for ION that resolves ION URIs from your USD files. For that, naturally, we needed a C++ API. So it's a subset of functions. If there is enough need and if there is enough demand, we can expand it and push it further. So let's have a look at the pipeline. If you want to see more in depth with the pipeline, there is a talk tomorrow from Calibrate Studios. Roy will be showing their USD workflow, and the day after, at the same time, same room, it's going to be talk from Orca Studios that have been with us for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, almost since the beginning, that will show their workflow. So I will not go too deep into how you do actually things in there, but come to those if you're interested. But some key points. So it handles versions, namings, and files. We do this with a templating system. You don't have to go to millions of YAML files to do that. There's a web UI where you can define all of this. So essentially, project can have any number of routes. I've just added a new route for a project called render. Now, there are various templates that tell you, hey, work files, default work files will be stored in, that went back, so it's going to happen again. They will be stored in some particular way. But what you can do if I decided, hey, all my renders, I need them to go to a completely different storage, it is as simple as creating a new route in here. And essentially, in a template of a publishing, I can say, you will go to root render rather than root work. You can spread this out as much as you want. You can go crazy, like tiny modular. Don't do it. You'll lose track of where your files are. Even ION cannot help if you have 20 storages each for a different type of publish. But all of it is done on a project level in a centralized fashion. So hopefully your supervisors can learn very quickly how to operate this and they don't have to go into code. That is the idea. We do also have a system on top of it where you have contextual pipeline settings. So there's way too many settings to actually go through them. But as an example, if I have an option to open last work file on launch, which means when I start Maya on a task, system tries to find the latest file that the artist was working on and automatically open it directly, so you don't go then file open and something. Now, there might be situations where in certain types, like in Maya and Houdini, when they're working on SEDRES tasks, I know there are massive scenes that take 15 minutes to open, for example. I want to disable this option. So there's many places across the settings where you can do something we call profiling, where for particular context, so Maya or Houdini, for a certain task type with a task name that we can use regex, so you can be very kind of clear on exact, awkwardly specific scenarios. You can say that this feature will be enabled or disabled. So the philosophy is that usually there are reasonable settings for most of your system, and then there are the outlier situations that you need to change a little bit. So our approach is that change that rather than coming up with a new system everywhere and how to do that. But this kind of profiling you can also apply on your paths, for example. So if I have a type of publish that needs to be treated completely differently, or type of work file, Unreal is a very good example. We have a situation when Unreal allows you certain file lengths, because why not? Because C++ backends and stuff. So it actually doesn't handle our basic paths for work files very well, because they are nested inside of a folder and a shot and sequence and all of this. So we have a completely different template called Unreal work files, which are shortened. It has less tokens. And then we can say, in situations where you're working with Unreal, blah, 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 SEDRES, use, it's a different setting, but it looks the same, use this particular template. So once again, you don't have to rebuild your whole system. You can be selective into, here is a situation, here I apply the situation, and any settings that you do, you can apply on a studio opinion, but you can also override them on a project opinion and project level, if need be. Hopefully you'll be able to find it, because here I see that only core add-on has some settings overridden based compared to the default of the system. So if really shit hits the fan, you can always go in there and just, in the staging, remove your opinions from the settings, and you're back to default, and you can very clearly see it. You don't have to go digging through 300,000 options and files and all of that. So, by the way, all of this is essentially designed from our pain points, because as we support studios using the system, as I was saying, there's over 50 studios that we worked with over the past 5 years. You very quickly realize that if you're supporting them, you need to very quickly find problems in settings and issues. So all of this has been more than vigorously tested by Ynput team on a daily basis, just because it really hurts if you can't find where the problem is. So that came from our need, and hopefully you can benefit from that. AYON does handle environment management for you. So if you're not using Res already or something like that, you can keep using Res if you do it. It's totally possible to connect it to AYON applications and tooling settings. It's not exactly first-class citizen, but in places where you're setting up your application path, so here is where my Maya in Studio lives, you can use any commands and any extra arguments, so it's totally possible to kind of plug your Res full setup into our system. But if you're not using it, AYON probably does exactly what you need anyways, because you can define environments per application, extra environments per variance of application, so Maya 23 or 24 can have some overrides on those environments, and they get merged together, and the tokens get resolved. You can do that per what we call tool, and this is not looping, so I'll try to just play this again. You can also do it per tool. So I'm going to be showing here, if this plays, maybe. Yeah. So in applications, you can see I just defined where my Maya lives, and you can do multiple executables in a studio, and they are then picked based on the order. And the first one is tried, and the second one is tried. But in tooling, I can make, for example, a tool, Arnold, you set your environments, then environments per version, 3.1 and 5.0. You can assign these tools to your project hierarchy. So I can say all of the project is using, well, you would see it behind this blue thing if I did my job correctly when I was setting it. There's an attribute there. Imagine an attribute there, right? So where I'm saying that the top sequence is using Arnold 5.0 across the board. So when you launch Maya, it will come with the correct Arnold. But there is a shot that for whatever reason we need to go archaic and we need to use Arnold 3.1 or anything else. So I can say only this shot will use this different environment, and when I launch Maya on that shot, it will launch it with a different environment. You can override this down the hierarchy, and all the attributes in AYON, everything that you see as attributes, you know, width, height, FPS, resolution, all of this is hierarchical. So you set it on one place and it inherits down. If you set an opinion on another place, that inherits from that point onward, and you can remove those overrides on essentially any attributes. So what tools you are using on a shot in AYON is just an attribute that is populated by your settings. So in settings, I say I have all of these options, you know, 20 different plugins, and I will assign them to all of these tools, and you manage it from there. It integrates, well, anything that has at least somewhat reasonable API and some things that have absolutely no reasonable APIs. New integrations are popping regularly. We are doing these as clients request, as the funding comes and as the demand is happening. Community integration, OpenRV recently merged, was actually almost fully community-based integration that works really well, and it is now part of the system. We do our best to make them similar, but your mileage will vary. It's very important to know. This being open source and funded by studios directly, the tools that get the most mileage, they get the most robust tooling because simply funding comes to them more. Tools which are slightly of an outlier will have maybe more specific design inside of them, but over time, as we're working with more and more studios, these are coming to the same levels. Now, if we say something is integrated, it means at the very least you don't have to do any grunt work to get AYON up and running in that application. All of them have the work files management, all of them have some publishes, all of them have loading. So at the very least, even if it's a very lightly integrated DCC, you can take it and you can just start building small Python plugins which are export this, load this, change this, so you don't have to do all the heavy lifting. But most of them have reasonable workflows. Anything that is, in AYON pipeline has been directly funded by studio or 2 or 3 or 10. So all of it is used in production somewhere. There is nothing, we never ever come up with features in pipeline that we will be like, oh, that's cool, and then 20 artists throw it in a bin because they're like, I never asked for this. So everything that's there has been directly requested or funded by some studio. That's why there are quite heavy differences between those different integrations. We do our best to use anything that is industry standard or standard-ish across the board anywhere that we can. So any image processing, any timeline processing is done through Academy Software Foundation projects. USD, there's very heavy USD push. Sorry, OpenUSD. Which way do we say it now? I'm not sure. So there's a heavy push happening right now. There's a work group pushing the workflow. You can see that tomorrow, and the resolver is almost finished as well. We also go a little bit beyond that. We are part of the technical steering committee of Open Asset IO project. So we're actually the first project that has integrated Open Asset IO as a first-class citizen system. There is an AYON manager for Open Asset IO. The usage is somewhat limited at the moment. It is a proof of concept for Open Asset IO team and for us as well to find the usefulness. So if anyone is interested in geeking out a little bit more, you can go there, you can try it. The easiest way to try the project right now is to try it with, I think, the latest release of Nuke and AYON are the 2 native products that can make it very easy. It's like a couple of environment variables. And you can, in your read notes in Nuke, instead of a file path, you can use AYON URI, which is essentially AYON :// and then a hierarchical path to the representation instead of the file name, and it's going to be correctly resolved on multiple platforms. It's going to be correctly resolved with various traits in there. So we try our best. And last but not least on the pipeline front, the desktop launcher, as I was saying, it auto updates for all the artists that are there. You can sideload it as well. If you have a robust system, IT system that already handles all of the applications, because ultimately it isn't executable, you can do that. But very importantly, we support all platforms out there. Windows, Mac. With Mac, there is a range of versions that we are willing to support. I mean, you go too far back and you lose your sanity very quickly. With Linux, we default provide Rocky 9, I believe, but we do test on Ubuntu as well. We do test on CentOS 7. I think we might be providing CentOS 7 in the builds as well. I'm not sure, but Rocky definitely comes with the package that you installed, so fully possible. For the server itself, please don't try to run it on Windows and Mac. I mean, you can, but just use Docker, go Linux, keep your sanity, keep your stability and the speed. So let's have a look at the last section of the product. This is a fresh one for us. So essentially what you're going to see here is stuff that we've done over the past few months. Vast majority of what I'll be showing we've done since Ynput Community Summit, which was exactly a month ago in Prague, where we announced that we are going into these uncharted waters for us. So you'll see what we've done within a space of time. There's a full team now dedicated to making sure that you can start running your productions in AYON fully natively. So the first one, we are focusing on artists first. We are fully aware that there are production tracking systems out there which are really good at what they're doing, actually. Really good tools for review, really good tools for producers. Our point is the artist first. So we want artists to stay in AYON as much as possible. So we have first implemented Artist Dashboard, which is essentially all of their tasks. You get list view that can be filtered by folder, statuses, whatever you would want, sorted based on those as well. Switched between list views and board views. Importantly, you can switch between my tasks and tasks of my team. So me as an artist, I can define either a team or a bunch of people that I work with them interested in how they are doing. So maybe there is 3 more animators that work on shots around me and we kind of collaborate. So I can set those 3 teams in the Kanban and then switch between them. So I can see this is all I'm doing, and I switch to the team mode and I can see how they are doing on their tasks. So we're trying to make sure that the home screen for artists is something where they don't have to jump out of too much. To simplify it, here is what you need to do. Here is how you do it. But that's not very useful without, and this was built a few months back, but that's not very useful without activity feed. So this is very fresh. This is going to come out within days or very short weeks. We've just finished working on activity feed. The way we approach it is, of course, you have comments as you would expect. However, you also see all the other activities when these loops, you'll see it again, all activities that happen. So status changes, which are collapsed here, it doesn't bother. You can open it up and you see any status changes, any changes that happened to the entities themselves. Comments support any formatting that you would like to have from it. So headers, anything that you're used to from kind of modern chat applications. Lists, but we also support references. So you can say, at certain person, and it will show on their feed in the correct place. You can say at in a version. So if I'm commenting on version 5, I can say, hey, this looked much better in version 3, so I just do at. It shows you versions relative to where you are. So we all already find, okay, so you're talking about this product, probably you want to talk about versions of the same product. So you can say in version 3, it was better. Or you can say, as I have it here somewhere, if I stop for a second, you can also tag tasks. So you can say at, and you say another task within the same context. Now, this is the important one, because I'm a soup, I'm commenting on a comp task, and I want to say, hey, this actually needs to be fixed in lighting. So I don't have to go looking for the task. I'm looking at the comp, and I say, hey, this can be fixed in lighting. What happens is the same comment. As you can see, someone mentioned this task in compositing, but this is an effect task. So I know there is a comment from compositing that comes to me that's relevant to me that I can work on when I'm working on effects. And this cross-referencing shows everywhere, and we essentially treat it as a kind of more modern chat application where you can do this across the board. When you click on one of those, it looks like this is not looping either. When you click on one of those, I want to pause. Oh, I'm too late. I'm too late. This is the battle of presentations. When you click on a reference of a task in your context, what we do, we temporarily roll it out, so you can see all of the context you need of that task that is being talked about. You can read what happened. You will see when there is a version published, you will actually see that those versions published in here as well. So you can quickly have a look. All right, in comp, they were talking about this when they said that I need to fix something in lighting. And then you press escape, and this thing goes away. So again, the whole thing is made, so you don't have to go into another place in the project and try to find where is the comp task, where is the level. You stay within one context. You can also filter. If you click on comments, it gets rid of everything that's not a comment, so status changes, version publishes, and all of these things. It just shows you the comment stream. So this is all one unified stream of activity that you work with. But we also have checklists. So in any comment, you can create a checklist, as you would imagine. You can use the button, or you can just do square brackets. If anyone is used from GitHub and similar places where there's Markdown, you can just do square brackets and keep typing. What's important, though, again, you can make these checklists for other tasks from your task if you need to. So, hey, lighting, can you please deal with it so we can provide it to comp? The problem is that as that happens inside of the comments, if there is a long stream of conversation, it's hidden somewhere up there, somewhere like 3 weeks before I got 3 comments, and I ticked 2 of those, and the third one I forgot about. So you can switch to checklists, and that gets rid of every comment in the feed that is not actionable, and it only shows you the actionable comments, so you can see, okay, have I checked everything that has ever been commented on this particular task, so you can see what was that. We're going to be adding things like counters, so the task you will see, hey, you've done 5 of 10 actionable items within your feed. So this is coming out very, very soon. Now, project anatomy presets. So we kind of, whereas I was saying the flexibility in production tracking, we don't want to lock you to how you work. So apart from the file path that we were talking about, every project in AYON terms has something we call anatomy. It's essentially the schema of the project. You can choose your own object types, task types, folder types, which can be really anything. This is a preset for episodic. Set your own statuses. You can pre-create tags. So you can use tags however you want. The way it works, you can create tags in the system that you want to have always locked on the project. So they will be available for anyone to just put to any object. They can put these tags. But people can make new tags on the normal project as well, and they're differentiated. So you can see, hey, there is a tag on this shot, which is official from a project, or there is a tag on this shot that someone just added in there. It's treated a little bit differently. So if you need to do categorizations that, we just didn't expect, you can absolutely do that. The way this works, we have presets for different types of projects. You can do as many of them as you want. When you're creating a project, you give it a name, you choose a preset, that sets the starting point for the project, and this is very important. These are not live. If you change anatomy after you created the project, you're changing just the anatomy preset. You're not touching the project, so you don't accidentally change 7 project types if this happens. But after you create it, it is specific to that project. So whether I do it now or if I come to its settings afterwards and decide, hey, I need to add a new status, you can do it, and you're not affecting everything else within the system. You can do it per project. You can, of course, copy and paste these into multiple things, and you can promote it to the top and to the bottom. But this is the core, and if you change this, there is always a potential of breaking things. You have to be careful. Hence, they are locked to the project itself. So creating a hierarchy, we would hope that you do it through an ingest tool that we have, so through publisher or editorial where you create all the shots at once. But if you're doing them actually in the system from scratch, we have sequence creation tooling where essentially you say, I want a sequence of shots prefixed by the parent, so sequence 1. You give it first name, second name, and how many you want. The naming is inferred, similar like an Excel sheet. If you do 2 fields and then you drag down, we infer the sequential naming based on the first 2 names that you put in there. So you can very quickly create very large hierarchies in the system. I mean, here I did the standard 0 at the end, but in the third one, I just do some completely bizarre number. Start 35, 36, hence it's going to be numbered by 1. You can go by 2, it really doesn't matter. Whichever of them you do, it's going to work. You can bulk create tasks as well, so if I select all of these shots, I have a feeling I'm going to be doing it here. If I select all of the shots, I can say I want to add tasks. By the way, all of this is happening with keyboard shortcuts. I'm not clicking almost anywhere here. So I add match move, comp, I keep jumping between them just with the tab and shift enter. You can add a lot of tasks at the same time, confirm it, off you go. We are working on additional system to this, copy paste of the full setups. And on the roadmap, we have a large templating system which would allow you to define these intricate structures, store them as templates, and then reuse them in other places. Architecturally, 100% possible. It needs a little bit of love and a little bit of UX tooling around it to make it really easy. So right now, this is the best way. There are some tools that are coming up. So we have a node graph add-on currently in beta for clients and for studios that want to try it. Let us know. It is part of the cloud offering automatically because we can easily deploy it there, but it's not a restriction. It is only a starting point. Essentially, it allows you to see relationships of your project. So you can define your own links. We come with some examples, but you can define whatever you want. You can say, I want a link which is a whatever camera operator, and it's between this entity and this type of entity, and how you use it in your system, it's totally up to you. But here I'm saying breakdown and workflow links. Breakdown for us is, I'm saying, these assets should appear in these shots, whereas workflow is saying, this is the flow of tasks that should be happening in the system. And again, that can be then used in automations, and you can query it and work with it. But you can see it in a graph. You can create those links just by drag and dropping. When you select any node and you press, there is a shortcut for it, which I don't remember, I think S. It expands it like you can see in the middle, so you can see everything that's inside of that. You can kind of quickly nest through things and jump out of them again. So essentially, if I want to see, okay, show me all the assets that are going into this shot, you can see it visually. We will be adding tooling that will show you table views of this and kind of other ways how you can split the data. And this is really just the beginning, so we are able to portray all of the data in AYON in a nodal fashion. The simplest one is showing the relationships that exist, but this will be expanded massively in the future with other capabilities that we can do in there. So currently in beta, absolutely usable, and you can try it. With a whole lot of bugs, by the way, beta. That's why we call it beta. You have the freedom to choose. We are never going to be, even though now we are going into the production tracking, we are not saying that we will very quickly replace other toolings. There are very good reasons why studios using various tools, and you need to be able to choose. So we will never be closing this off. Currently, we support all of the relevant production trackers on the market. Some of the integrations have been written by us. Others were actually supplied by the makers of those integrations. So if you want to use F-Track, Flow, Kitsu, Aquarium, all of them are now integrated with AYON. You can totally use them for production tracking and use AYON just for the pipeline, whatever floats your boat. We are working on a system. For some of them, for Kitsu and F-Track, it's already possible to have it on for some projects and off for others. We are absolutely aiming towards a system where the data is in the AYON system, and you should be able to say this project works with FTrack and this works with ShotGrid because I might have a vendor, I might have a different opinion, I'm trying another tool. The data is the important in your scenes, and you shouldn't need to change pipeline if you change opinion on how you're managing your tasks. We are hoping that people will find ION production tracking useful, but we are also going to limit where we're going to push it, and we're going to do 20% of production tracking really well, rather than doing everything and then find out half of the features have never been clicked. Do you know the dusty buttons in the UI that if you can actually show it, there's features that no one ever clicked in many systems? We'll try to avoid those. But we understand that some people need them, so that's why this is always stay open, and you can totally pick your layers as you want. We have some other productivity integrations that we've built for our clients, which are open source because they generously kind of provided all of those. There's a HiBob, which is a HeyJar system where you can kind of manage your artists. Slack integration with messaging after you do publishes. Clockify integration, so we have an automated desktop tracker that logs all of the data into Clockify or into FTrack, I believe, and turns off after 15 minutes and starts with the task. All of that is possible and built onwards. I have a quick point about Ynput Cloud, just to clarify. The fact that your ION is connecting to Ynput Cloud does not mean that you're being hosted or that you're paying for Ynput Cloud. Ynput Cloud is for us a platform that provides all API functionality for making this whole ecosystem function. So you can deploy completely local ION that's independent of us. If you connect it to Ynput Cloud, there is a button inside, and it just asks you, give us organization size. There's like very minimal information, but that provides you the access to the marketplace. So you don't have to go to GitHub, download a thing, build it, and upload it as an add-on. You can then automatically update. So there's a quid pro quo that you connect some API has to give it to you online. So you can connect. It is totally possible to migrate local instances of ION to our cloud, and it's absolutely possible to migrate cloud instances of ION to your local deployments. So you're not locked either way. It's up, like, try it whichever way you prefer. Try it on local. If you realize that you don't want to be maintaining it, we will be very easily able to help you and migrate the whole thing up. But vice versa also. If you realize at some point, hey, we actually now grew enough that we can manage it ourselves, we don't want to be hosting on Ynput Cloud, you can do it, and we will help you. We're one of the bizarre people that will help you migrate of our product to your internal development. We are happy to do it. That's the whole value that we're trying to build. There will be some features on Ynput Cloud which will be kind of automatically built in, which are not on the desktop, but they're mostly architectural things. So for example, if you're on Ynput Cloud, you automatically have email notifications and email resetting of passwords because we manage the mailing servers ourselves. If you do it locally, of course, you need to have some emailing servers that provides ION the capability. So some things are a little bit easier, but we are not restricting features. There might be some things we add on top because it just happens to be easier on the cloud, but making sure the underlying core is always fully 100% compatible between the two. To give you some numbers, last year, exactly a year ago when we had the summit, the first meetup in Prague, we knew of about 50 studios that were using OpenPype in March 2023 that we could track. Open source is the lovely thing that you have no idea who's using it where. But these are the ones that we had confirmed. To give you the scale of where we have pushed this, since December 12th, when we deployed, when we released the pre-release release candidate of ION and released the first version of Ynput Cloud, over 300 ION servers that we can track. Track meaning we know where they exist. That connect to Ynput Cloud market. Over 300 have been created and connected in the last 4 months, and this is going up in a fairly steep fashion. Of course, some of them are test instances, some of them are production instances. All of that is included, but these are not overlapping a whole lot. We currently have over 300 organizations. So that is roughly 1 server per organization. It's not like a developer has 50 of them. So the traction is there, and thanks to everyone who did it, and more thanks to everyone who connected and told us when something didn't work. Please do it. We're not too precious about it. If stuff doesn't work, please let us know. It's kind of hard to find out without the feedback. I want to help. That's the people who connect and very often don't tell us about themselves. But this is incomplete. Definitely incomplete. I apologize for any studios that I forgot. But these are the studios that over the last 5 years have funded, supported, gotten support from us, helped us with either contributions of the code or are using the product in various ways. But these are the studios thanks to which the product is free and why it's out there. Every single one of them has helped in some massive fashion, most of them by being clients of Ynput, ergo funding the whole development to a big degree. What is currently there is a distillation of opinions. What's the default? When you deploy AYON and you get some default settings, is the distillation of opinions of all of these studios that we did our best to kind of average out to something that hopefully works for most studios out of the box. This is what the map looks currently. This is the distribution of all currently on-prem AYON servers connected. The colors kind of show how many studios there are, and the sizes of circles says how many users they have inside of the AYON. When you connect to Ynput Cloud, essentially what it tells us is, hey, there is an ID of a server. We have no idea whose it is. We just know there is a server existing in this geographical location, and it has 50 users or 100 users. That's the extent of information that we have. If you want to see exactly what it sends us, it's on our website. There is exact JSON file of what information is sent to us, so you can have a look. It's just like it's 5 numbers essentially. So we have some kind of tracking who's using this, not who, but how many are using this. That hopefully gives you an idea of the AYON Open Studio platform. We are just getting started. We consider this 5 years of testing and validating, and now there's 5 years of heavy push ahead of us, hopefully helping as many studios as possible. This is what the roadmap looks like for 2024. We don't plan further than 1 year because first our developers are a little bit too fast. When 20 people are bashing out code every day and you merge 1,500 pull requests a year, it's kind of difficult to plan for longer than a year. Plus we know that tech is going to change. This will be public. Very soon we'll put it on our website as well, so you'll be able to track it. I saw pictures happening there. We'll make sure it happens. But it's going to change over time. We are not one of those that say, hey, here is a plan and this is going to happen. This is the plan. Plans change if studios come and the demand changes and studios come, for example, with funding and they say, hey, can we move this much further and we would like to fund it and we would like to help it. That's how we develop the whole product and that's how this works. But this is the current plan that we're going to be doing. Any questions? Anyone who asks a question gets an AYON hat. I'm going to be throwing, and if I hit you, well done. If I hit someone else, congratulations, you got a hat for free. So, yeah, I think you were first.
So I do have a question regarding the way that you to set the environment for apps via the UI. Is there a way to resolve this environment like with code or
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, there is. Essentially, you can, the AYON launcher, the executable, you can run it and tell it, I don't know the exact command, but you tell it resolve environment for this context. That's what we use on the farm. When we send the job to deadline, the integration automatically, we store not the environment, we store the context and the job and the bundle, so it resolves correctly. So actually on the farm, if you send something to a farm, and in between it starts rendering, you change your bundle. So you change settings and you change blah, blah, blah. Those bundles are versioned. So that render is going to pick up the bundle which was active at the time that it was sent to render. Otherwise, you will get ugly surprises. So yeah, that's absolutely possible. Catch a hat. We'll see. I'm good. Nice. Yeah. So there's multiple ways. The native that we have, we call it SiteSync. It's essentially a library inside of the tool, and it's built into the multiple UIs as well. And very soon there's going to be, I saw yesterday, a tutorial of a member from community who's going in depth in there. So watch out for it's going to be on YouTube. But essentially, it's a system where every data that comes through AYON is associated with a site. So a site is a machine, a server, anything that we can identify within the system. The site has information how to store data in it. So it could be a local storage, but it could be an S3 storage, or it could be a Google Drive, right? So in every machine, every artist that works, it always has 2 sites. The active site, which is where I store something in, like when I press publish in Maya, that goes to active site, most often a local machine or a studio storage. And if you have SiteSync activated, as soon as I publish to active site, SiteSync picks it up and syncs it to the remote site. Now, what that is totally up to you. So we have studios that, for example, sync 2 physical locations of studios where one is one side and one is the other, and all artists in Studio A have active site set as Studio A, and remote as Studio B and vice versa. But we use it with clients that have 50 artists sitting at home in God knows where, Venezuela. And they essentially, it works as a caching mechanism there. So they would use Google Drive, for instance, as the remote. In Studio, all the data, there's a service running and all the data is pushed to the Google Drive automatically. And artists at home, when they open Maya and they have a launcher and they want to model, it tells them, hey, this is available 100% in Google in your remote side, but it's not on yours. So you say right-click, download. It pulls down. Downloading is done on demand. We don't try to push all of the data. It's like you say, hey, give me everything for this shot, so we're not too crazy. Pushing is done automatically. We assume that if you publish something, you want it to make to other people, but you can configure this. Yeah. This is tracked to a quite heavy degree. So we have these custom links, as I was showing in there. By default, we create a lot of them. So we have links, a reference type link that tells you to use the end of this, you need to have the input of this. So that's a rig, for example. To use this rig, you need to have this model. We keep track of that, but we also have generative links that tells you this was generated by this, but you don't need it anymore. So if you have a work file and it generates an alembic, you want that information, but you don't need the work file to use the alembic, right? So you have types of links that you can use. We try to, in most places, we automatically publish them. So in Maya, when you publish data, most of them remember these links. But quite frankly, it kind of depends on your end workflow. So there are studios that have to augment what kind of links they want to store. So they might take our publishers and just say, hey, for us, this linkage is important, because you suddenly link everything and you end up with a web network that's just not traversable. So yeah, and the sightsync respects it. So if in sightsync I say, hey, give me this work file, last animation work file, we know what references in Maya flow into that work file. We'll download those, and then we open the work file. So sightsync does its best to traverse. Again, we don't try to traverse 5 levels deep, because sooner or later you get into a point where it's just not reasonable. I mean, we are using the technical stack that we have, the Postgres database, Redis caching on top of it. It's pretty much the system that banks are using for a lot more systems. So we tested on unreasonable sizes of data sets, probably. That doesn't mean it's not going to choke up, because it depends. The system itself I mean, that's going to handle it. But it depends what you're running it on top as well, of course. So if you run it in a small Docker on some small machine, it's going to be a limit. Like our cloud deployment, for example, runs on natively on Kubernetes scalable clusters. So we don't set the size of the machine. If you give it a massive load, it will realize, oh, okay, this needs more, and it will scale up accordingly based on that. It shouldn't choke up. It really shouldn't. We tested that. I mean, the person that's designing for us the main core of it, our lead designer of the server, is from broadcast, who keeps whipping our that we are slow. So I mean, the speed requirements of broadcast systems are a hell of different to what we need in VFX. So that's why we put him on the job, and it will not choke up, I think. Yes. Yeah. I will throw a team member under the bus in the back there. Peter, wave, higher, higher. There you go. Speak to Peter. We have just finished the first version of Perforce integration that we are now testing with a couple of clients. How far it gets for your production requirements, kind of hard to tell. 10 studios, 24 opinions on how it should behave. But it's there, and we are going to be continuing onwards. Not just because of Unreal, because of other types of productions as well. So yes, the first version is already, and it's public, Apache 2 license on our GitHub. It's possible to try, and it's been collaboration with a few studios. By the way, I don't think I can throw far enough, so please come for a hut afterwards. Yes? And yes. I truly hope not. Look, the core team is Pipeline. That is our forte. Our philosophy is that production tracking is lovely, but if you don't have data that you're feeding into it, it's the most useless piece of software. So we are, I mean, to give you an idea, production tracking is like 3 people team, and the Pipeline is 15 or 16 full-time. So there is a strong focus on Pipeline in this company, and will be. We will be expanding on top of it, but that's also why we're not saying that we're building every single feature of a competing production trackers out there. I've consulted on, I don't dare to count how many studios on using all of them. I've been training all of them, and they tend to use roughly 20% of features of all of those trackers. So we will do those features well, and we will stay open to, if someone wants more than that, go to a maybe bigger, more robust solution. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of studios that will not need it. And we do have clients already, and we are absolutely making it possible to say that your producers might very well need nitty-gritty details of flow, for example. Oh, I'm getting used to that name now. Good. That came out. So they might use it. Genuinely, they're toolings that we're not going to be building. We're not going to be matching that one-to-one. No way. But what we want to allow you to do is to have your 20 producers use that, have a full sync between the databases. They can do planning. They can do all of that stuff. But maybe your 50 users, artists, don't need to be on that system. They need to see their feedback. They need to see their tasks. They need to see the video online. They need to go to the review. But it doesn't mean, that's the problem. A lot of these are focused on a part of the studio, because it's easier to sell to producers than artists, by the way. Artists make very few choices in the studios. It's much easier to sell to producers if you do their features. So we're going to do our best not to dilute it. Never say never, but I will be the first one to be annoyed if that happens. I mean, we've been running these productions for years now. We have most of our studios historically were using FTrack for production tracking, and most of them still are using FTrack for production tracking. We're not matching that one-to-one. It's a solid product, and it's a live sync that happens continuously. Yes, here and there that could choke up. Here and there you miss a piece of sync, but that can be done better and better, and we will do our best to support them officially. So like we have collaboration with Jan from Fatfish. You can go speak to him at Aquarium, recently announced, and we worked together on making it happen because we genuinely don't have a strong opinion that you need to use one or the other. There are good reasons to use multiple tools. So we'll do our best to support all the other providers if at all possible, and if they're willing to work with us, we'll make sure that they have good experience, because it might be good for them as well that there is a pipeline tooling that can actually make robust system underneath that, But that's kind of this is fresh news over the past month, so we need to have some conversations. But we will do our best not to dilute it and do our best to we want to make AYON the central part of the studio. If you're setting up a new studio, the target is, what do you use on the underlying core? We want you to think AYON. Now, whether you just take the server and you build everything from scratch on top of it, perfect, do it. That means part of it was useful. I don't expect every studio in the world to be using AYON in its entirety. That's just not going to happen. I've seen too many broken cases of, hey, we'll use this for everything, and very quickly, we need to rewrite half of it. So, yeah, keep us in check. If people feel that, hey, Pipeline is getting crap because you started doing production tracking, my email is milan@ynput.io. Please let me know, and I will be the first one to raise the flag in the office. Any other questions? So, painful topic, huh? Essentially, so yeah, Houdini, there is a big push for updating the integration. The problem is what's currently there operates in similar ideas as we operate with other DCCs, Maya, Nuke, and all of this. So artist-facing tools that kind of hide away a lot of the complexity, which means it does the job for a certain cohort of people in the studio, and it completely annoys seasoned FX TDs in Houdini to the redness. I'm one of them, by the way. I'm originally FX TD in Houdini, and it's, yeah. So what we're doing, we're not going to be replacing it. That is useful for shot work when you need to bash out a lot of shots. It's actually useful to have something simpler. But we will be adding a bunch of native AYON nodes as modular tops inside of the system to essentially let Pipeline TDs and FX TDs design their own complex tops workflows. So we're going to just we have a high-level things there, which is quite useful. And Roy tomorrow on the Color Bleed talk about USD. Most of that is in AYON or OpenPype and Houdini, so you'll see it's definitely usable. But we'll essentially be adding low-level nodes that allow all of you geeks to do whatever you want with the system. By the way, that's not going to be a whole lot more than now. You can drop in a Python node inside of TOPS and simply talk to our API. So, but we're going to wrap it up into some nicer things. So the point is, we're not expecting us to know better what Pipeline TDs need inside of Houdini, because they are a special breed of brains. So we're going to provide the toolings to do that. That's the idea, to annoy as few people as possible. Anything else? Thank you very much. If anyone is interested, and all of you should be interested, we're playing a game. How many AYON t-shirts can we wear on Friday on FMX? There's lots of AYON t-shirts. They're these ones. They're lovely. They're 4 colors, all sizes. Please come over, grab some. And if you raise your hand again and grab a hat. And yeah, grab us around the week. We'll be here until Friday. Talk about USD tomorrow. Talk about Orca Studios. Cloud setup, their fully cloud-based studio that run on OpenPype since they started, pretty much, since the inception. And on Friday, we're going to have here a panel discussing the options between making creative work and focusing on internal stuff, software development, and where to draw those lines. So hopefully those are going to be interested. Thank you very much for coming.